Should not surprise anyone, should it?
No, this should not surprise anybody, particularly as it comes from the Chinese Communist Party, which has an aggressive fist threat inside the United States that stands for Foreign Intelligence and Security Services. And in particular, the way in which the CCP uses what they call united front work in order to influence elites around the world, to co-opt elites, to connect economic incentives with political compliance, and really individuals, corporations, and countries that adapt pro-CCP positions and talking points receive lucrative rewards. Those who challenge the party orthodoxy are punished. And we've seen this time and time again on college campuses, in corporate boardrooms, and now in the halls of Congress.
You know, Mike Gallagher, I am the president of the Nixon Foundation, and of course I do fundraising for that. I want to build buildings and put on programs. And we have a lot of great Chinese Americans who support us because, of course, they love President Nixon for getting them out of China to begin with and for the relations he opened in the Mao period and the Zhou Enlai period. But they are great patriots, and we know everyone who joins our board, and we know every dollar, and we take no foreign contributions. With one exception, we allowed Qatar to host a blood drive once. But we have a huge defense against any foreign contributions because we are afraid of undue influence. That is not the case with a lot of not-for-profits and, sadly, a lot of universities.
100%. This is why I just sent a letter to the Department of Education that got written up in the Washington Post yesterday involving foreign gift reporting. And I was concerned about a $10 million gift to Georgetown, where I went to graduate school. I love Georgetown, Hoya Saxa. But it traces back to a Thai conglomerate called the CP Group. And one recent report notes that the CP Group is tied to the Chinese government through contracts. But frankly, that only scratches the surface of their connections. Until just last year, the CP Group was run by a gentleman who was a major United Front figure, featured in a great report from a researcher named Alex Chosky on United Front activities. And the CP Group official who actually signed the letter announcing the donation to Georgetown is closely tied to other United Front groups like the Chinese Association for International Understanding. And you can see how once you peel away one layer, you find 5 other layers. It gets very complex. But I just fear that these universities don't understand where the money is coming from when they take money. All they see is a lucrative gift and, tied to a very benign sounding name for an organization. And we really need to do a better job in the federal government in general and in the intelligence community in particular, unpacking United Front work and making average citizens, organizations, think tanks, universities, nonprofits aware of the complex web that leads right back to the Chinese Communist Party.
You know, Congressman, I have a suggestion for you. When we do our annual audit for the Nixon Foundation, we have to make representations from the audit committee as to what we have reviewed, and our auditors review any material weakness in our accounting, et cetera. If the standards change to oblige companies to review any major gift or a gift over $100,000 for any indicia of foreign influence or espionage, at least every not-for-profit will then be obliged, and you could make it apply to for-profits as well, be obliged to look at any major gift with steely eyes. And there are people out there who will and who know this area. There's no excuse for being stupid.
Hugh, I love that idea. I look forward to stealing it and pawning it off as my own when I introduce the legislative version of it. And anything we can do just to force a greater degree of scrutiny that we have right now, I think is very important. One thing we've also been debating at a bigger level when it comes to the security of our capital markets is whether you can extend the definition of a prudent man standard for investing to include, not allowing major companies to invest in Chinese defense companies or allowing major pension funds to invest in Chinese defense companies. So there's a lot of different ways where we can tighten up our regulations in order to get at this. And then as we've talked on your show about before, we have very weak lobbying disclosure requirements in the United States. And there are ways in which American citizens are subverting those lobbying disclosure requirements so that they can make a lot of money by lobbying, de facto lobbying on behalf of Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE. We've seen high-level former Obama cyber officials doing exactly that. We need to tighten up those laws as well. And again, I just think we're scratching the bare surface of Chinese United Front work. And I think the Swalwell report, we're going to see more accusations like that or reports unpacking things like that coming out in the coming months.
You know, Congressman Gallagher, when I sat down at my desk at the Department of Justice in the AG's office almost 40 years ago, I was a young lawyer off the D.C. Circuit, and my job was, once I got my clearances, to prepare Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants. And my hair turned gray when I looked at the number of foreign nationals in the United States for the sole purpose of subversion and spying who were under deep cover. It's like The Americans was made from my early life, that television series. I believe personally, although that was a vast effort involving East Germans and Cubans and a whole bunch of foreign nationals and Soviets undercover and some at the embassies, that it is dwarfed by what the CCP does. I really believe it is dwarfed, and they play a longer game than the Soviets ever did. They've been at this for decades.
I completely agree with that because 40 years ago when you were, I'm not sure how old you were, I was -4. Our guard was up, right? We were in the midst of a Cold War, and the fact is, for the last 2 decades, we've gotten complacent. After the Cold War ended, we didn't have anyone breathing down our neck, and in the last 4 years, and I really do believe this will be President Trump's enduring legacy, perhaps the most important part of his legacy. We have finally woken up to the nature of the threat, but we're catching up. We're catching up after 2 decades of complacency right now. We don't understand the scale of the threat. And certainly the Chinese Communist Party believes there is no distinction between military power, economic power, intelligence power. They have a doctrine of civil-military fusion. It's game on. And their goal is to destroy the West, led by the United States of America.
Now, Congressman, I want our Chinese-American friends to understand every American official I've talked with does not want McCarthyism to return against Chinese Americans. I've talked to Secretary of State Pompeo about this. I have talked to National Security Advisor O'Brien about this. I have talked to everyone about this. And there are ways to guarantee that American citizens do not feel any blowback. That's got to be foremost in your mind as well, because we do not want to increase suspicion of our fellow citizens. We do want people to be worried about recent arrivals from China who are here on visas, because that is and people who came from China originally and who have got their green cards now. We want, absent citizenship, we want guards to be up.
Well, as the member of Congress who represents Joseph McCarthy's district, where he is buried to this day, I would like his legacy to stay dead and buried. And I think we need to be loud and clear that we do not have a China problem. We don't have a problem with the Chinese people, who are the foremost victims of the party's oppression. We have a Chinese Communist Party problem, and we're going to have to make that distinction. And it's going to be difficult, particularly when it comes to unpacking espionage on college campuses. But it's one that we have to do, because you're absolutely 100% right.
Congressman, I would also give you a second idea, which is to credential people that the experts in this area believe adequate to conduct the kind of audits that every company and every not-for-profit need to do. I mean, if they're worried about this, who do they call? Call Ghostbusters. Well, call Spybusters. But who are Spybusters? And I don't even know. I've got a group that does it, but former FBI agents usually. But who do you have any idea if there's a list of people that universities and endowments and not-for-profits and corporations can call to investigate their vulnerability to espionage?
I don't think there is. One thing that I've written about in the past is the need for Congress to maintain what I call a united front work tracker, have some sort of independent analytical capability where we can start to unpack this. We have some really brilliant people like Peter Mattis and others who have done that work, but I'm just concerned that level of expertise doesn't even exist in the intelligence community. One thing of note, Hugh, in the National Defense Authorization Act that we passed out of the House this week, and I hope will pass, and I hope the president doesn't veto. We have some provisions related to this. We have protections against Chinese industrial espionage. We have transparency requirements for Chinese military companies in the United States. There's a lot of provisions where we've tried to get at this, but again, we're at the early stages of this very intense effort.
Well, think about regulatory requirements for material weakness findings and for giving us some expertise direction. Congressman Mike Gallagher, great piece. Follow him at Rep.